So you guys probably saw my video recently that I did, which is my top 5 strong female characters in biblical fiction. And I thought it was only fair that I also bring you guys my top 5 strong male characters in biblical fiction. Once again, if you guys like this video and think it might make a good series idea, be sure to let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me do this kind of video for historical fiction as well as contemporary fiction or another Christian fiction genre. For the most part, I only read historical and biblical fiction, but if you have some other suggestions, then I could try and put something together for that as well. But without further ado, I wanted to get into my top 5 strong male characters in biblical fiction because male role models are just as important as female role models. Am I right? So to begin, I think this is kind of another one of those ones that's like a little bit obvious, like in terms of why I picked it, but that would be Love in a Broken Vessel by Misu Andrews. If you don't know what this story is, it's the story of Hosea and Gomer. If you don't know the biblical story of Hosea and Gomer, Hosea was commanded by God to marry a prostitute so that he could be an example of God's love for the nation of Israel. And it's a very powerful tale, very redemptive tale. It's been adapted many times. And the most popular adaptation is probably Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I recommend that one too, but that's one that I would consider more historical fiction since it is a biblical fiction. It's a biblical retelling, not necessarily strictly biblical fiction where it takes place in a biblical world. That's my personal preference on how I categorize it. I know a lot of people still consider Redeeming Love biblical fiction, but for the purposes of this video and for the purposes of my channel and what I do, I consider Redeeming Love historical fiction, but this is a good, strictly biblical fiction retelling of the story of Hosea and Gomer. And I'm pretty sure it's kind of obvious why I would pick that, because this guy had to follow a lot of really hard commandments by God. It was very difficult for him, but this is definitely a book that you should read if you liked Redeeming Love and are into that kind of storyline, or if you just want to know more about Hosea and Gomer. I would say that this is definitely a good read for that. I actually just looked over and realized I picked a lot of Misu Andrews' books for these. That was purely coincidental, but I think she has some great characters and she's really great at crafting biblical fiction, so it's no surprise that she ends up topping most of my lists. The next biblical fiction character that I have is Mered, I believe that's how you say his name, from The Pharaoh's Daughter by Misu Andrews. The Pharaoh's Daughter is the story of, obviously, the Pharaoh's daughter who pulled Moses from a basket when he was a baby, pulled him out from the Nile, and then adopted him, raised him as her own. Then eventually Moses went off into the wilderness and blah, 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 and then came back later and said, let my people go, and there were a bunch of plagues and blah. Anyways, this is a book set during that time period of the Exodus, and eventually the Pharaoh's daughter kind of goes through some hard times. Once her plot is revealed that she's been raising Moses, who is a Hebrew baby, once it's revealed how she kind of disobeyed Pharaoh's command when it came to killing all the Hebrew babies. So that's kind of the plot line of this book. But eventually she ends up, in a pretty dark place, and I think through it all, Mered, the character, is a really good guiding light for her. He's really strong and supportive of her. She goes through a lot of grief, a lot of depression, she has a lot of fear, but in the end, Mered is always there, and he's kind of like her rock, if you will. And he's just a really great example of what it means to lead, but also to trust God, because Mered also experiences a lot of grief and loss, and it makes him kind of angry. And to be honest, if I experienced that kind of grief, I'd probably also be wondering a lot of the same questions that he wonders, which is stuff like, why does God do this to me? Is God even real? How can God exist if there's so much pain in the world? And I think that that's something that this book really addresses, and I really love his character in this book. It's one of my favorite books, biblical fiction books of all time, so it makes sense that the main character, the male character in this book, would also be on my top 5 strongest male characters in biblical fiction. And again, all of these are kind of just my general opinion and what I think makes a strong male character. Some of you guys might disagree, some of you guys might agree. If you guys have different opinions or have other male characters in biblical fiction that you'd like to recommend, be sure to leave them in a comment below, but these are just some recommendations that I've enjoyed. Okay, so the next male character I think is, again, going to be kind of an obvious one in terms of why I picked it, but that would be Boaz from In the Fields of Grace by Tessa Afshar. This is, again, one of those ones where the characters have to go through a lot of hardship, a lot of difficulty, and a lot of trial. Oh, by the way, this is a retelling of the story of Ruth and Boaz, as in Ruth and Naomi. But yeah, Boaz in this book, again, is a very good leader. He's a very strong character. I really like just the whole treatment of this story by Tessa Afshar. Tessa Afshar is an amazing biblical fiction author. So if you are looking for one, then definitely check out her work. But Boaz in this book definitely makes me feel all the feels in terms of just everything that goes on and all the plot and everything. And he's just a really, again, strong leader. And again, he goes through a lot of hard circumstances, but in the end, he remains faithful to God and then just grows as a person from it. And I think it's a really, really, really good story, and it has a really, really good arc, so you should definitely check this one out as well. Okay, so this book we're currently reading for my biblical fiction book club, the Biblical Fiction Buffs. If you don't know, I host my own book club. I'm the leader of a book club, and it is called the Biblical Fiction Buffs. It's a quarterly online book club through Goodreads where we pick a book to read for each season. We're currently in the season of fall, so that's September, October, and November. And we read a book and we discuss it, and we discuss all the other biblical fiction related things. So in my list of top 5 male characters, the book we're reading, A Light on the Hill from the Biblical Fiction Buffs, actually makes an appearance, because A Light on the Hill by Connie Lynn Cassette features a character called Derek, and he's actually one of the main characters throughout the entire Cities of Refuge series. Of course, I'm not going to hold up the entire series, because if you are in the book club, then I don't want to spoil anything for you if you haven't read through the whole book, or if you haven't read through the entire series yet. But A Light on the Hill by Connie Lynn Cassette is pretty amazing. The whole series definitely makes me cry. It makes me laugh. It just, all the feels, you guys, all the feels. But Derek, I think, especially as the story progresses, turns out to be a really strong male character throughout the entire series. And I really, really love that. And I can't really say much more about him without like causing some major spoilers, but he is definitely a strong male character that I love. I love all the male characters in Connie Lynn Cassette's books, actually, so if you haven't checked her out, make sure you do. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites, and if you'd like to read this book with us, then go join the Biblical Fiction Buffs book club. The link is in the description below. All right, and the last book that I am going to be recommending to you guys in terms of strong male characters is Of Fire and Lions by Misu Andrews. This is the last book I have by Misu Andrews, I promise. But this is Of Fire and Lions by Misu Andrews, and this is the story of Daniel, as in Daniel and the Lion's Den. And of course, as we all know, Daniel is an incredibly strong figure in the Bible. He was literally put into a lion's den, and he was told that if he, did certain things, he'd die, and he continued to do them because he knew that that was what God wanted. And I really enjoyed that aspect of his character in Of Fire and Lions. I talked about it a lot this year. I even posted a reading vlog for it, so if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely scroll back or search for that. It's the Jenna Van Mourik's Of Fire and Lions reading vlog. So if you want to go watch that and hear my thoughts on this book overall, make sure you go and check that out. But this is, again, one of those really great books in terms of strong male characters in biblical fiction. All right, so that is my list of male characters in biblical fiction that I think you guys should definitely check out. I hope you guys got some recommendations, or just in general got to geek out about some books that you love if you already have read all of these like I have. If you did like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Don't forget to leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought, as well as if you think I should take this series to other genres like historical fiction and contemporary fiction, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. My name is Jenna Van Mourik. I'm a girl who reads, writes, and lives for Jesus. You can find me on social media at all of these links. I post pretty much daily on Instagram, and I'm active fairly often throughout the week everywhere else, and I post lots of book reviews, writing updates, writing advice, bookish things. So if that's what you're into, you should definitely go and subscribe, follow, all the things. Once again, my name is Jenna Van Mourik. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!